Okay. Welcome back, everyone. Thanks for joining us. I'd like to pass you on to Ore, who's going to do a presentation on confidence and inside job.
Good evening, everyone, and hello. I am so excited to have this opportunity to speak to you this evening on a topic that is so dear to my heart, confidence and inside job. Now, we all have a story to tell, a story that has made us who we are today. And this evening, I would like to share mine with you in the hope that each person who watches this can take something away and make use of it to add value into their lives and the lives of those around them. As a young person, there were three things that I really craved, and those were acknowledgement, affirmation, and acceptance. It wasn't until I learned that I had to do that for myself first that I started to get these from other people. So here is my story. You may be wondering who's that cute little girl in that picture. Well, it's me. And sitting next to me is my foster dad. When I was 3 months old, I was fostered. My parents had come from Africa to study in England. And on arriving in England, realized that they had to work as well as study. And so when they found themselves pregnant with me, a dilemma presented itself. How were they going to study? How were they going to work time and look after a little baby? And the only option available to them at the time was for me to be fostered. And so at 3 months old, I was placed in the care of Jock, a Scottish man, and his wife, Rainey, a couple that loved me. I was in their home for years, and I grew up to be a bubbly, friendly, well-adjusted little girl. They affirmed me in every way possible, and I actually thought that I was a princess. We lived in Maidstone in Kent, and I remember back then in my school, I was one of 3 Black children. And I mentioned that as detail because it has an implication on what I say later on. But as a little girl, it had no meaning for me. Life was just great, and I was a confident little girl. Something happened to me when I was years old that was to sweep the rug from under my feet. And just before I turned 7 years old, so 2 months before, in December, just before Christmas, I was abducted. I was at an event with my mom, my English mother, and at the event, a lady approached me and she asked me what I wanted for my Christmas present, and we got talking. Now, this particular individual, I knew. She was no stranger to me. And so when she said, would you like to come outside and have a look at your present that I got you? I thought it was okay to go with her, although I did ask her, have you taken permission from my mummy? And she said, yes. And so I followed her. And when we got downstairs, she said to me that, in fact, her present was something a little bit more bigger. It was bigger than that. And that both her and her mother, my mother, had planned for me to go to Barbados for a Michael Jackson concert. 2 things I had desperately wanted. I loved Michael Jackson when I was little, and I wanted to go to Barbados. I'd seen pictures in a magazine, and now it seemed that everything I wanted was going to happen. So I happily went with this lady, not knowing that I was being abducted. 2 weeks after she'd taken me, we were still on the run. And one day I found myself on a plane, and I found myself in Africa, where I was told that my foster parents weren't my mom and dad, and that my birth mother had taken me. Now, just in case you're wondering why I didn't know who my parents were, well, because I had been placed with my foster parents for years, they were avoiding any confusion. And so during the course of my life with my Scottish dad and English mom, it never occurred to me that they were not my mummy and daddy, despite the fact that I was a black child and they were white parents. Because as a little girl, I didn't know how you got babies. They told me that you went shopping. And so I just assumed that they went shopping, saw a brown baby, that was their favorite, and here we are. And so when I was told that the lady who had taken me was my foster mom, I couldn't believe it. I couldn't accept it. And I just wanted my mummy. But my mummy never came. And I found myself stuck in a place where I knew no one, a place that was unfamiliar, and a place where I did not speak their language. And I found myself a traumatized and vulnerable 6-year-old girl. Now, what impact did this have on my life? Well, the abduction in itself was a pretty big traumatic event, but that was only the beginning of my problems. Because what I attempted to do as a little girl was, in my head, I was thinking, my mommy and daddy love me, and so they're going to come and get me. So what I'll do is I will just go and make some friends, and I'll just play, and sooner or later I'll be going back home to England. And what I found and encountered, now, just so that we can create the scene, I was in Africa, where everyone around me were Black. And so imagine my shock when I was rejected by the children because they said that, oh, look at this fat girl who wants to come and play with us. Some even called me Blackie because my skin tone was darker. And for the first time in my life, I was exposed to rejection and abuse. And by the time I was a teenager, this was me. Now, you may look at that and think, oh, she's so cute. And maybe, yes, maybe I am, but I was 16 years old here. I was a mommy's girl. I eventually realized that the lady who took me was my mom, because by the time I was 16, I knew how you got babies, and it did make sense. Although it took me years to be able to call her mother. But by the time I was 16 years old, I was really needy. I lacked confidence. I was called names like Fatso, Roly, Okutumbu, elephant. And as I grew from a 6-year-old into a teenager, gradually, every ounce of self-confidence that I had as a child was chipped away. By the time I was 14 years old, I hated myself. I self-loathed, and I wanted to be anybody else but me. It was a sad existence. I was very attractive. I attracted insults, ridicule, put downs, and I felt like an ugly duckling, always on the outside, looking in. A place that I wouldn't want any young person to be. I'd like to share an event that happened to me. It's not really an event. It's an occasion that I will never forget. When I was just about to turn 15 years old, I was invited to my first party. Now, when I was a teenager, I wasn't invited to parties because I wasn't cool enough. I was a reject. But on this occasion, a friend of mine had invited me to her birthday party. And I was so excited that I got to go. And I remember getting dressed. I remember the dress I wore till this day. And I made my way to this party, very excited, looking forward to being with people my age and maybe being accepted. And as I approached her house and I walked up the path and up to the door, I was just filled with anticipation. And as I got to the door, there were 2 boys standing there. And they stopped me. I said, "Excuse me, what do you want?" And I remember feeling a knot in my tummy. My heart rate picked up. And I thought to myself, oh my days, something bad is about to happen to me. Because I was used to being treated badly, although I hadn't expected it on this occasion. So I took a deep breath and I said, I'm here for my friend's party. And they looked me up and down as they assessed me and analyzed. And then they asked me this question: are you sure? That was probably one of the most loaded questions I have ever been asked. Am I sure that I've been invited? Am I sure that this is where I'm meant to be? Am I sure that I'm good enough? Am I sure she knows me? I mean, it meant so many things to a 14-year-old. But I just thought, okay, something needs to happen. So I said, could you please, in a begging voice, could you please go and get my friend? And she will tell you that she invited me. So off they went. A couple of moments later, they came back, looked me straight in the eye with their arms folded and said, sorry, we can't find her, and blocked the doorway. People were watching as this humiliation was going down for me. So we're giggling. Nobody stepped in. And when they did this and blocked my path, I did the only thing that I knew how. I turned around and I left. My rights had been taken from me. They had seen me coming. I had written on my forehead, doormat, target, abuse me and you'll get away with it. I turned around and left. It took me 2 hours that day and 3 buses to get home. And I, Ore, cried all the way home. By the time I got home, I had concluded that, Ore, you are the most useless, worthless human being that I know. And I'm just going to pause there just for a moment for you to think about that, what that could have meant for a 14-year-old girl to conclude that. So that's where I was as a teenager. And I longed to return back to Britain, the place of my birth, where I had been treated so well, where I had been free and full of confidence and been respected in my soul. I just wanted to return. When I was 18 years old, I had that opportunity and I came back to England. Guess what I found? I found that name calling, insults, and verbal abuse, they just continued. And I couldn't work out why. I thought, but where's the England I once knew? When I turned 19, 20, 21, it started to dawn on me that, oh, there's one thing that England and Nigeria have in common for you. You are the problem now, and you need to fix it. I did not have any counseling, didn't know that I could get help or support, but I knew something had to change. So I got to work. And it took me years to get the little 6-year-old Ore back and then enhance that human being so I could be free and that I could still be attractive, but this time attract respect, attract love, attract admiration. And this is something that I just want to drop and see how it lands with you. Because that doormat that was written on my forehead, I didn't like it. And now this quote is by an unknown person, but I love it. If you don't like being a doormat, then get off the floor. No one was going to pick me up. No one was going to give me confidence. I had to physically take action and do something myself. And this is something that I'm so passionate about communicating to everyone, but especially our young people. Let's get to them now before they are adults so that they're strong and powerful and can make a contribution to the communities. So here I am, or here I was a few years ago, married with 2 daughters, having a happy family. After years of working on myself and even having the confidence to be the one to ask my husband out. It was not the done thing when I was a young woman. You just didn't do that in case the man said no. But I was so confident that I thought, well, why wouldn't he want me? He'd be a fool. And so I ended up marrying this wonderful man, having 2 beautiful daughters, and enjoying a marriage where I was respected and supported and enabled. 3.5 years ago, my husband died, leaving me with my 2 daughters. Of course, there was some fallout following that. I'm now left to do a big job on my own, and I needed everything that I was to kick into play. Both of my daughters have had to have counseling for mental health issues as a result of the bereavement. But I can tell you now that we are a family of superheroes, as you can see in this picture. So this is a caricature of the 3 of us, good-looking ladies, being strong and forging ahead, because we have a job to do in the world that we live, and we can only do it if we do an inside job on ourselves. So what is an inside job? An inside job addresses working from the inside out rather than from the outside in. And it looks at how we can be an attraction magnet when we accept ourselves for who we are and who we are not. It is so important that we need to do that. So I just want to briefly take you through some steps that I have had to experience in order to go from hopeless to hopeful. And what I share from you is from personal experience. And I hope that you can take something from that. Now, the first thing I had to do, so if I'm going to accept myself for who I am and who I am not, I needed to address the 3 things that people used to identify me back in Nigeria. The common phrase, and I heard this, so it wasn't stuff that was passed on third party to me. I heard people say things like, don't you know Ore? You know, she's that black, fat girl. Black, fat girl. Now, this is America, by the way. So I don't think anything racial was intended, but whatever the case is, it felt like an insult to me when people would say, that black, fat girl. And so my identity as a young person was, clearly, I'm a girl, female, I'm a woman. Yes, I'm black. And I was fat. And probably I'm still carrying a few pounds now. So the first thing I needed to do was accept who I was. I am female. I am a woman. It's a powerful thing to be. I am a black woman. There are women who are white women. There are mixed race women. Whatever it is, that is what I embrace. And then, yeah, I've had to fight, a few pounds from time to time over the course of the years. That is who I am. And I needed to embrace all 3 of these to feel beautiful to me. And not to think anymore that, Ore, you are the most useless, worthless person that I know. That had to change. So first, I had to identify with myself. And that is what I propose every individual does. Because until we can fully accept who we are for everything that we are and everything that we are not, we cannot expect others to. And it's quite a powerful thing to be in that place. It attracts other people to us when we fully endorse who we are without having to be perfect and accepting any flaws that we may have. So I wanted to quickly address this working from the inside out and from the outside in. Because there's something called self-confidence and there's also something called self-esteem. And sometimes we can confuse them. Now, they are interrelated, but they're not exactly the same. So if we look at this particular slide, here we are, we have this young boy on doing some kind of stunt and looking really good and feeling really confident. That is somebody who believes in his ability. And so what he's doing comes from the inside out, and people can see that and applaud. The young girl takes a selfie, is looking at her reflection, thinking, I better make sure I look good. It'd be nice to get some compliments. It'd be nice for somebody to tell me I'm good looking. And so probably waiting for the endorsement of others. And yes, of course, we need to be endorsed by others. We want to be complimented, we want to be applauded, we want to be told, well done. That is important. But how about getting the inside job done first? Knowing that we have faith in our abilities as a human being. Because I remember when I first started my speaking career over 15 years ago, my mentor said something to me that I've never forgotten. He said, Ore, remember that every man you meet or woman is superior to you in some way. Now, that wasn't meant to be a put down that I need to think that everyone's better than me. That wasn't the message. The message was, no matter how confident you become, Ore, no matter how amazing a speaker you become, Ore, don't become arrogant. Always recognize the abilities of others. And that is a way to boost our self-confidence. When we recognize that other people around us can do something that better than us that we can't do, it also means that there is something that we can do that maybe or we can do better than others. And so it's an empowering thought to recognize the ability of other human beings. So there is a difference between self-esteem and self-confidence. Self-esteem is a high estimation or value of oneself, and it's a good thing to have, but it does permit others to control how we value ourselves. So there's a bit of outside influence, and how we feel with our self-esteem can depend on the applause and the accolades that we're getting from other people. And so it's important that we learn that we really should be in control of how we feel about ourselves. And that's where self-confidence comes in, which is self-assurance or self-belief, which allows us or you to control how you value yourself as a human being. Very important to make that distinction. So with an inside job, because remember when I started this process in my early 20s of, and by the way, before I jump from my early 20s, I was reunited with my foster parents when I was 20 years old. So that story ended well. And so that was wonderful to be able to have that. And we were able to continue that wonderful relationship just the 11 years. Actually it was 13, because I was 20 when I found them. So it was wonderful to have them back in my life. They have since passed on because they were elderly, but it was wonderful to share some years with them before that happened. So when I was in my early 20s and I realized that, all right, you're sick and tired of being a doormat now. You need to get off the floor and do something about it. I had no help. I didn't go to any sessions or workshops or anything like that. I had to find a way forward. So it took me quite a number of years. I was in my probably about 33, 34 before I could really fully say, do you know what, Ore, you are the coolest person you know. So it took a number of years for me to get there, but I got there in the end. To save you time, I'd like to share what questions I asked myself in order to do an inside job. The first one was, what are my attributes? And in a moment, I'll take you quick through the practical part of what I had to do. I know that time is not on our side, so I am going to keep it brief. What are my attributes was the first question I asked myself. The second question I asked myself is, what is actually keeping me small? Why do I feel as if I'm inadequate and I'm worse than anybody else and I'd rather be anybody else but me? And what was keeping me small? And then finally, how could I step out of my comfort zone? Because that needed to happen in order for confidence to occur. One cannot develop confidence without being uncomfortable. Just like the boy doing that stunt on his bicycle. He didn't just actually get up one day and say, okay, I'm going to do a stunt, and it fell into place. I'm sure he had a full scrapes and he fell over a couple of times. And so developing confidence takes effort and usually involves some resistance, especially from ourselves. So where my attributes were concerned, I physically made a list. I wrote down qualities, attributes, skills, talents, about myself that I could think of. And I think I must have asked a couple of people as well that, if I were to ask you, what are some of my attributes or my qualities, what would you say? So I made a list so I could see it. I also made a list of some of my flaws because I felt it was important for me to go through that process. And what I found was that my list of attributes, qualities, skills, and talents, it was quite a fairly long list, probably longer than the list that you can see on your screen. And my list of flaws, maybe I was lying to myself, I don't know, but my list of flaws were not that long. I probably pushed myself to come up with 3, probably have a lot more, but maybe I was in denial. But the list was very, very short. So on paper, I looked good. Now that was empowering to me. Something else that was empowering to me was knowing why I was kidnapped. Because now that I had been reunited with my foster parents, they told me their side of the story. My birth mother told me her side of the story. I realized that both wanted to keep me. And one had to resort to something I don't approve of or endorse, but that is why I had to go through that experience. And it was because 2 sets of parents loved me and wanted me so much. And that was quite something for me to take on board, that, wow, Ore, you're loved. And now look at your list. So I would recommend, it's a simple exercise, but it's a powerful one. I believe in simplicity and depth. So it's quite a powerful exercise to do. Then I had to look at what's keeping me small. Now, this is an interesting one because I identified that fear was one thing that was keeping me small. So the fear usually of what others think about me. Sometimes the fear of failure, and also the fear of not living up to the expectations of others. And I think that you would probably be able to identify with some, if not all, of those 3 things. I think the fear of what others think is probably one of the biggest fears of all, because we actually know what people think. And so we decide for them. And we can come up with some serious stuff. And it's very disabling. So fear was keeping me small. And then vulnerability, which is interesting because vulnerability is actually quite a strong quality to have, because it is important for us to be authentic and to be our real selves. In that, I have found power. So previously, I was being kept small because of fear and because I didn't want to be vulnerable, and people pick on me and call me names. I didn't want to be the underdog anymore. And I thought being vulnerable is why I was the underdog, but it actually wasn't. And so I had to overcome my fear of what other people think and make it their problem, not mine. And then I decided that I was going to be honest, keep things real. It was too heavy carrying stuff around and pretending to be something I was not. And so I would engage with people on an emotional level. And it was empowering. And I could be fully self-expressed. And so now I don't worry about what people think, because I think as long as my intentions are well-meaning and I do the best I can, then that should be good enough. And if somebody isn't happy with that, then that's a them problem, not a me problem. And so that's something that in my sessions I encourage, we work through, what's keeping us small, what are our fears. Let's talk about vulnerability. And also these 2 issues are very, very important when it comes to managing our mental health and being able to disclose. And so it feeds into so many different things. Also public speaking. So I do a lot of public speaking training with young people, and it's still about this fear and vulnerability as well. So if this is something that we address, it can free us up to then go forward and really live this that we were designed to live. And then the third one, how was I going to get out of my comfort zone? Now, this was my comfort zone. In fact, it still is. If I could have my way, this is where I would be, on the couch, watching Netflix or doing a puzzle. Puzzles are good, by the way. They're good for mental health, but I can't spend all day doing them if I'm to be productive. And so this is my comfort zone. Just leave me here and I'll enjoy my life. But the only problem with this is I'm not going to be able to move forward. I'm not going to be able to move forward. And so it would keep me small. And so I need to get out of my comfort zone. So I created a training session based on a confidence box. And I'm just going to briefly go through that because I want to leave enough time just in case there are questions. Now, when you first look at this box, it doesn't look like a box until you let your eyes settle. And then you can see that where it says social well-being, that's the sort of like the base of the box. And there are 4 aspects to the confidence box. And when I'm training, especially with young people, the idea is that we accumulate, we're putting things. I should have actually put sort of like a slot at the top so it looks like a piggy bank. And so we're putting things into the confidence box, and it's gradually growing us and improving us as individuals. And so the 4 areas that I focus on in my training are: 1, personal growth. We have to keep on moving forward. We have to keep on growing, because what it does, it boosts our sense of morale and confidence and sense of self-worth. If we're constantly learning things, and we could do, I mean, now I'm on Zoom and training on Zoom. Last year, I couldn't do that. So that's boosted my confidence to think, oh, wow, I can do this now. And then there is our health and fitness. We need to be well and feel well, because that's important. Feeling well. And then there is social well-being, our interaction with others, because that is so, so important. And then finally, the contribution, where we are giving to others in terms of either our time, our knowledge, it could be money, but where we are contributing to other people. And if we focus on these 4 areas, I would have loved to have gone into them. I actually had my paperwork ready, but time will not permit me. But if we focus on those 4 areas and keep them at the forefront of our minds, we will start to collect things into our confidence box until our confidence is boosting and brimming, and people are just attracted to us like a magnet. That, wow, what is it about that woman? What is it about that man that, you know, people just flock to him or her? A gentleman called Marvin J. Ashton, a leader that I know, he said this. He said, do not allow yourself to be self-condemning. Avoid discouragement. Teach yourself correct principles and govern yourself with honor. Appropriately involve yourself in helping others. As we develop proper self-image in ourselves and others, I promise you, the nobody attitude will completely disappear. Ever remember, wherever you are today, that you are someone. And those words, they ring true to me, because this is a process that I've experienced. And my attitude of, Ore, you are useless and worthless, it's such a thing of a past. I don't regret that I thought that or said that, because it is important to be able to tell a story when working with young people, especially, that, you know, I've been there, I get it, I know what it's like to be the ugly duckling. But I also know what it's like to look at one's reflection in the water and see a swan. So now, as a human being, I dedicate my life to thriving and not just surviving. And so I hope that in sharing my story and a bit of my journey, and in a summary, because that was a summary of my life, editing it, that maybe something may have dropped or landed with you that you can find worthwhile or valuable in your lives. And I hope that at some point that we can connect and have a proper conversation about an inside job. And I appreciate you all being here and giving your time to listen to this presentation. And that is the end of my story.
Wow. I'm not really sure what to say to that. I'm not sure. Can you see the chat box now, Ori? There's a couple of comments in there.
Okay, let me get into the chat box. Oh, yeah. Yeah. Uh, that's wonderful. Um, it's interesting about being honest about our flaws would be a challenge. And before I did the list, I thought I had a long list of flaws based on how I was treated. That was my belief. So if I hadn't actually decided to make a list, I don't think I would have taken that advice from somebody else. I would have been too afraid. But in order for us to accept ourselves, because if you remember at the beginning, I talked about acknowledgement, I talked about affirmation and acceptance. And in order to get that from other people, we first need to be self acknowledging, self affirming, and self accepting. And that will not happen if we believe that our flaws are bigger than our virtues. And they never are. It's just bigger in our heads. And so we need to, what's the word, confront. We talk about fears again. We need to confront what's ever in our way and slay the dragon, because only then do we feel like a hero, and then do we feel victorious. So I understand that it's a hard thing to do. I really do. But now that I've done it, I feel free, Rachel. And I feel free, June. I feel free.
Yeah, I can see that. See how, but I think a lot of the flaws are that you think you have flaws that nobody else would notice. You know, I would say that there's things that I think, oh golly, people must think this about me. And when I say it, they're like, really? Yeah.
It is so true, because I couldn't go through a lot of the things that I experienced because of time. But I remember, I cannot, especially that experience when I was refused entry into that party. And what was interesting when I asked them to go and call my friend is that I was confident that my friend would come to the door and validate me. And that she would say that, oh my God, how dare you,
Mm.
you know, treat her this way. Believe it or not, last year, June, I was reunited with that friend and told her this story. And she said, without any promptings from me, exactly what I had expected that she would have said. And she was heartbroken. She never knew I came to her party. She never knew. She was heartbroken that I had experienced that.
Mm.
And so she valued me. And she was popular, very attractive. I was like an underdog stooge that she dragged around. So that, and yeah, and the flaws that I thought I had back then, now I remember the first days I heard somebody say, I want to be like me. The first time I heard somebody say that, I was in shock. I'm like, why would you want to be like me? The ugly duckling. But I'd started to blossom then, but I just hadn't realized it or acknowledged it.
That's interesting. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So someone shared something on one of the social media pages yesterday that was basically about, um, I can't, I will find it and pop it on the Celebrating Spring page, because it was about when you're a little bit unusual, people don't know how to deal with you. They don't know how to accept you because you're not like they expect everybody to be, and you are end up feeling like that's your fault.
You are so right. Because
Yeah.
I have had to reflect, and I have to do a lot of reflecting because 90% of the work I do is with young people. That's where my passion lies, because I cried a lot as a young person and I didn't feel validated and accepted, always on the outside looking in. And I am on a mission to make sure that as many young people as possible don't have to experience that.
Mm.
But I had a train of thought. I was going somewhere with that, and it's just from me. I have a tendency to go off tangent. What were you just saying, Rachel, before I said that?
It was about being unusual and making you feel like it's your fault for your oddness.
Yeah, I got it. Thank you for that. I've got Dory syndrome. So, because I work with young people, it is very important that I reflect. And I reflected on that. Now, all of my life, I assumed they treated me that way because I was fat. And I was chubby as a little girl. And I got chubby as I grew into a teenager because I just ate myself into not caring. And I always thought it was because I was big that I didn't get the respect. It's only when I was older that I realized that it could have been my accent that was threatening. I had come over from England. I sounded different. It may have been intimidating for some. And it was important that they found a way to keep me small. But I was already traumatized by being abducted. And so I was starting from a place of weakness. And I was too young. I was just under 7 years old. But I now look back and think that they didn't know. And I was also very, very vibrant when I first arrived in Nigeria until it was gradually, it was chipped and chipped and chipped and chipped. And so, yeah, probably didn't know how to cope with me. And so the best thing that they could do was destroy. And I was fortunate that they didn't quite manage that.
Amazing. So I've not seen that there's any questions. I think there's quite a lot of people making comments about the story being amazing, which it absolutely is. And the way you tell it is so engaging. I could listen to you all night. I really could.
Thank you.
It's brilliant. But yeah, I think obviously if you're going to be around later and that you know you're going to be able to meet people that are in the room, all this is being popped onto the YouTube channel. It will go onto the Facebook event page, and then we'll share it far and wide from there, because I think these presentations that people have given today have just been phenomenal. And I think it's such a shame if people have missed out on it for any reason, because I know a lot of people have had to come in and out. It's a long time, sort of 2 whole days to commit. So yeah, I think it's great. I will get that out there, and we'll hope get some questions and answers when we do that in the event.
Thank you very much. I must offer my apologies because I'm presenting a mental health session shortly, and so I need to get myself ready. I don't know how I got lucky enough to be speaking at 2 events tonight, but I embrace it.
No, yeah, it's great.
As much as I'd like to stay and chat, I really, really would. I have to get ready for the next session and make sure I'm fit for purpose.
Great. Okay. So yeah, if anybody's got any questions, they can contact you. How?
On LinkedIn is the best place. And my LinkedIn profile is my name, Ore, O-R-E, and then Ogungbayi. Maybe I should just type it into the chat box. And then I'll type in my website as well. So I can't see very well. All right. That's how you find me on LinkedIn. And then
Excellent.
also on Facebook as well, same name.
That's great. Okay, so yeah, we'll leave it there then. And that's brilliant. So hopefully we'll see you again at one of our events.
Well, I'm here, so all you need to do is call.
Okay. Lovely to see you.
Thanks for having me.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye. Bye.